Well, these fucking marks.
What the fuck is going on?
They're talking about Ricochet maybe leaving WWE.
Who cares? And where the fuck would he go anyway? AEW?
That's where everybody's assuming, Ma.
Yeah, great. He'll do his Cirque du Soleil match with Will Ospreay that we've seen a million fucking times.
I actually agree with you on that
Yeah,
one.
then he'll get lost in the shuffle with the rest of the shiny new toys and end up in fucking catering.
Oh, Mom.
All right.
This is why I drink.
Welcome to another wrestling podcast. This is episode 254. I'm Credo.
And I'm Angry Cooter, the social assassin. Credo, what's with the hat, bro? Seriously.
It's I don't know. I bought a fresh new hat. It's brand new. It's feeling good. I just need I don't know. I want to
It's fine.
Episode.
You're 41.
We're on video now.
You have
Everybody
a receding
sees.
hairline. Take the fucking hat off.
I like it. Well, let's see how far I can get with the show with the hat on. I like it. It gives me a little cushion around knowing that I'm secure and safe to do the show. I don't know.
He needs a safe space, ladies and gentlemen.
It's my safe hat.
He needs a safe space.
But anyway, I don't know. It's the hat episode. I like it. It's not bad.
Okay.
Cooter, we're once again down in Beacon, New York with Beacon Podcasting, beaconpodcasting.io. Check them out. If you want to do a podcast just like us, don't do another wrestling podcast, but maybe just another different type of podcast.
Hat's optional.
That's optional. beaconpodcasting.io. Check them out, and maybe you can join the family of podcasts over here in the Hudson Valley. Check them out, guys. This is where we are. We're in Beacon now. This is great. This is we're getting back into the groove. We've been doing this for over 10 years. Did you know it was our 10-year Twitter Twitter anniversary?
Well, it was for you.
For the other day.
No.
Well, that's when we started. It's like a 10-year thing. So it's kind of like 10 years, Cooter, we've been doing this. But we're still, I don't know, we're just getting grayer, I guess.
And we're still as irrelevant as we were when we started.
But at least we could do it together. At least we can be irrelevant together on the show. But guys, stay tuned. There's a lot of WCW talk happening. But I also think we're going to have somebody from WCW joining the show a little bit later. JB, who's coming on the show this week?
We have the one, the only Crowbar from WCW. We're going to be asking him all kinds of questions. We're going to find out what he thinks about the death of WCW. We're going to ask him what he's up to. And the only way to find out is tune in to another wrestling podcast.
Angry Cooter, a lot of things happening. A lot of people are angry online. I don't know. It's weird. It's blown up. Ricochet, maybe he's leaving. Maybe he's not. Maybe it's just for social. Maybe it's just for likes. Maybe none of this is true.
He's doing it for the gram.
I've never seen like a big like. Oh, he put in his notice, like, by when his contract ends, he's done. Where's he going to go? I'm like, he hasn't even gone anywhere yet. Like, nothing's happened. Like, all of a sudden, it's official. Dirt sheets are reporting he's not re-signing.
It's got to be true.
That's where it's going. But I don't know. It's weird. And I'll say it's weird because on Raw, they showed a lot of him before, like, getting injured. Then they had his girlfriend, Samantha Irving.
It's his fiance.
He
put a ring on it.
He put a ring on it. So I don't know. There's a lot of things in play, but this is the biggest thing going on right now. People are talking about it, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think
don't really care either
fake,
way.
Fake news.
You think it's fake?
Because
I said that too.
I don't think it's fake as opposed to like. There's a lot of people losing their contracts. Like Becky Lynch doesn't have a contract right now. They still got to negotiate it. I think Minority Mike sent us a thing about it to where TKO is involved with it. I'm not going to get into the whole thing, but
yes.
So they're letting contracts run out.
Yes.
Yeah. So there's a lot of business aspects in it. So, but I mean, maybe it was kind of like to test the waters. Like, hey, Ricochet's leaving. Does anybody care? Is anybody listening?
Nobody cares. Like, honestly, the only people who care are those diehard AEW fans, and I got news for you. He'll be hot for a month because why does everybody know Ricochet? Everybody knows him because of that sick match that he had with Will Ospreay. I want to say it was that WrestleMania weekend where Sami Zayn and Nakamura had that awesome match at NXT, right? And I've seen them wrestle a bunch of times, and it's literally the exact same match. So great. He'll go to AEW. He will have that choreographed match with Will Ospreay. And you know why it's perfect for him?
Why?
Because he can't talk. He can't tell a story. So this is a built-in story where he doesn't really have to do much. It's already there.
Yeah.
But then what?
Yep.
Then it's done. And he'll be as irrelevant as he has been now.
They don't use him. He needs a mouthpiece. He needs like a manager maybe. And, you know, not everybody is the best talker out there. But, I mean, he's an incredible athlete. But I think it's just fishy how things are going on because I feel like, you know, they gave him a segment at the beginning of the show and then the segment towards the end, or was it the very end? But it was toward, you know, another one where he gets injured. Braun puts him through the car, ambulance goes away, blah, blah, blah. So for somebody that's whose contract isn't knowing, yeah, they kind of wrote him off and kind of like did what they would kind of do with anybody else. But I mean, it just seems more fishy to where they're involving his fiance in on this. I mean, if you're not going to re-sign him, like, are they just trying to entice everybody? Be like, if we sign him, this is what could happen.
I don't know, man. I think putting that speed title on him, they were surprised that it didn't make him want to stay. What the fuck are we doing? It's just stupid.
And they can't even wear it on any other show because I think it's like Twitter or X wants it exclusive to their.
Are you kidding me?
Yes. So there's a fine line out there. Go check it out. So that's why they haven't put it on any of the shows. It's only on the Twitter show or whatever. But.
So wait a minute. If they sell that belt at WWE shop, does that mean you can only post the pictures of you wearing it on Twitter?
Kind of like the 20%. You know, it's
that's fucking great.
That's really not clicking with people. Like they're like, well, maybe if we just give him this is kind of his thing. But it's, you know, it's fun, but I don't think it's gonna last. I don't know. I don't think it's drawing people like, hey, I gotta watch this 3 minutes live now. It's in the middle of a work day. I gotta like sit on a Wednesday and check it out. And I don't know.
I mean, do you really want to be relegated to the match that people watch when they're taking a shit on company time? Like, I'm sorry, dude. No, it doesn't, and it sucks because he's really talented. He's a great in-ring performer. I can't stand him personally because I need to be invested in a story. Yeah. And it's not that they haven't given him the opportunities to be in stories. He just can't carry it. He just can't because he can't talk.
You know, and that's like there's a lot of guys that just need like a manager, or you have to book him to where, okay, if he doesn't talk, why isn't he talking, to where just have him have these powerful matches. But
well, you're not wrong.
At the end of the day, you got to cut a promo. But I know
look at somebody in a similar situation. Look at Bobby Lashley. Yep. Wasn't the greatest promo guy, but then once they put MVP with him, oh my God, what a difference and change in his character, and he went with it, and it worked well for him, and he actually can almost kind of sort of cut one now that maybe they paired him with somebody who kind of showed him what to do. Yeah. And I think the biggest mistake WWE made was moving him up to the main roster too quick because he was in NXT for like a cup of coffee. And I think a lot of people benefit from being in that system. And if he would have stayed a little bit longer and maybe learn how to, you know, hone his mic work, we wouldn't be having this conversation right now. And I wouldn't be as funny as I am.
I mean, you know, I love them. I loved him in NXT to where, you know, he would do that superhero jump outside the ring and like land there and then look up. Like he's just doing stuff that nobody else is doing today. Very few people are doing today. And could he be the Vince McMahon kind of like lost in that, because he was pretty much throughout Vince's tenure there was under Vince McMahon, like his creative. Was it was he too far gone by the time Triple H took over? Like, could we not fix him? But I mean, they tried.
Come on, they put the speed title on him. I hate repeating myself, but come on, dude. Great booking.
Title.
The speed title.
But that's, I guess, I don't know. That's maybe that. I think at the end of the day, all this about Ricochet, I think it's a work to gauge interest. I don't think they want to sign him away, but I think there's something going on with contracts with TKO. I don't know. I don't think it's.
How do you feel?
I don't see him anywhere else except for WWE. He's always wanted to like be there too. So
let me ask you this: how do you think Braun looked in that whole segment? With everyone's assuming that was going to write him off of Raw, and we're not going to see him anymore. What did you think of that segment overall?
You know, I've always said it from the beginning with Braun Breaker is that I don't like. He's grown on me to where I appreciate what things that he's doing. It's the name. I want him to go back to like a Steiner. I know we're not going to talk about that anymore.
No,
but I mean,
fine.
I think for him, I think if they're going to write somebody off, kind of give him the edge of once again putting somebody out, which is good. It just adds more to his resume coming in with Braun. You know, they want to push him to the moon, but they don't want to do the Roman Reigns pushing to the moon. Like it took them forever just to get over here, especially with like Carmelo Hayes, to where they should have been over like a year or so ago, and they kind of held on to them for as long as they could, and to finally come over here. I don't think they want to rush him though. I don't like what they're doing right now, showing like all these little speed things and power moves and knocking people back out of their contracts. It's making him look like a beast. It's making him look like somebody to reckon with. So
I mean, I think you can do that with somebody like him as a heel.
Yeah.
I think if you try to force feed people faces, it doesn't work as well. I think as the bad guy, everybody loves the heel. There's things about him that I love. I love the intensity. I love the look because he works like Rick. I said this before, but he talks like Scott.
Yeah,
and I love it.
It's like the mix of both of them. Yep.
But there's just certain things that irk me. Like there was that part where they were in the ring and he's throwing these rabid. It looked like Shane McMahon's rabid punches because some of them he wasn't even connecting, and it looked really bad to me.
Yeah.
But like, okay, we're nitpicking. That'll come with time, But it showed, and if this is what if this was going to be the big event that you had to really get him over as the heel, it left a little less to be desired.
I mean, they kept him out of the King of the Ring. He hasn't really fought, like, the IC title's kind of tied up right now with, like, a story going on, so it's like they can't put him into that yet. And then the whole thing for the, like, Damian Priest, he's not even to that storyline yet because they still got to work that out in the next few weeks. So I don't know. Anything could happen, but I mean, like, they're definitely building him up. Like, I think it's on the right progression. Like, it's not too fast, but it's enough to, like, either make him look cool or just, like, as a big name that's going to be there as, like, a heel going forward.
You know what I hope happens?
Yeah.
I hope they make him win Money in the Bank because I want to hear all you marks crying like little bitches because I find that shit hilarious. When y'all are crying, I take out this glass and I just drink your tears because I think it's great and it tastes.
All right, so today on another wrestling podcast, I'm super excited. We always try to get the wrestlers of yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and joining us today is somebody who kind of encompasses all three of those. So you saw him, maybe growing up you saw him. You definitely saw him, in the height of all the Monday Night Wars and all that stuff, and then now you still see him around. So it is our absolute honor to have with us. Depends on where you're at, what you know him as, Devin Storm, but I affectionately call you Crowbar. So Crowbar, thank you so much for joining us tonight on another wrestling podcast.
Thanks so much for having me on, man. Sorry it took some work, and I explain this to people all the time with the podcast. The hardest part of doing this now and being a pro wrestler in this day and age is the fact that I'm not just a pro wrestler anymore. If I'm a husband, I'm a dad, I'm driving kids to stuff, I own a business, and I put in crazy hours. So, like the hardest aspect of being a participant, an active participant in today's wrestling world is the fact that there are all these other things going on. Yeah, I'm proud to say that I'm pretty much a weekend warrior, and but I believe in spite of that, I do it exceptionally well, compared to guys that do it every single week. So I apologize that this took some work to get going, but we got it going, and I thank you for your patience, and here we go.
Yeah, absolutely. So I just want to, these podcasts, it also is difficult because there's so many people that are getting asked to do these. And so I apologize if you've been asked these things before, but it's genuinely out of, curiosity that I ask you some of these things. So
absolutely. No sweat.
I remember for myself, the first time I watched professional wrestling and kind of what it brought up. And for me, it was just something like I'd never seen before. And so I'm curious if you remember specifically the first time you watched professional wrestling.
Vividly. I am the youngest child. I have a brother that's 10 years older, a sister that's 11 years older, and I probably wasn't planned. So big gap there. And I remember growing up and Rutherford, New Jersey. My parents had a little Cape Cod house, and if you kind of know the layout of a Cape Cod, you got like the living room and like one bedroom in the front, the kitchen here. So my bedroom was way in the back, and I was not allowed to watch pro wrestling, not because it was pro wrestling, but because it was on so late. It would go on usually Channel 9, like if I recall correctly, midnight or so. And my brother was allowed to watch it with my dad, and they loved watching it. And I somehow found out that when I went to bed, they shut the door, I could open the door crack, and there was like a perfect angle from the opening in my door to the living room. And I remember watching pro wrestling diagonally from my bedroom to the living room of with the Cape Cod that we grew up in. And I was always a huge fan. I was instantly brought in by the athleticism, the crowd reaction, the over-the-top promos, and the pageantry. I love pageantry, and I really try to bring that back into what I do with my entrance when I can. Especially when we go down to Philadelphia for Battleground. We have this extended entrance with my wife. That's my valet, my bodyguard. First of all, they come out, they do this whole wall seat thing, and then we go into the Crowbar entrance. Just all of that just drew me in as a very young child. And as I grew, that love and that awe that I saw in professional wrestling just grew and grew and grew, where being a fan wasn't enough.
Well, that's incredible. And so if you're like me, obviously growing up, I had my favorites, and then even beyond that, the people that I didn't like. And it was odd for me because I grew up in the Midwest, so I would watch a lot of like USWA and all of that. But I would also get to see, the WWF at the time. And, my favorites growing up were like, Ravishing Rick Rude and Jake Roberts, just because they were more, there was just more depth to them, I think. And so,
Sure.
And other kids were very much into Hogan or Warrior or even Macho Man or anything like that. But I'm curious, who were the first people that maybe you really, really enjoyed watching when you were watching?
I enjoyed watching many, but no one captivated the imagination for me more than Randy Savage, Macho Man. And it was even as a young kid, he had incredible athleticism, and he was quick. You go on the network and watch Macho Man now, how fast he worked, and being a pro wrestler, I do work modern style where we do a really big move and there's a near fall, 1, 2, both guys lay there. Unless you've been in a ring, you can't appreciate how fast those guys worked and how incredible their cardio had to be. And one example that I'll do is that thing that Randy Savage used to do is he would grab the guy by the head, he would jump over the top rope and snap his neck down. And very often he would land, and he no sooner land, and he would slide at lightning speed right into the ring for a cover. I do an outside move. It's a thing where I jump over the turnbuckle, I drop a leg drop on the apron, and I land on the floor. The guy goes in. And I usually do that mid-match or so, and I really try my best to hit it, slide in, a la Macho Man. And it is, if you're tired, it's hard to hit and slide in that quick. So those guys just had incredible cardio and athleticism. But going back to Randy Savage, it was the athleticism that you could see. It was the costumes. It was the sunglasses. It was the music that stood out. He had a woman for a manager, which was the first time I had ever seen that. And of course, the promos. Nobody talked like him. And not only did he talk, his body language, he was so animated. Just everything about him drew me in as a fan. And to this day, I still watch Randy Savage on an almost regular basis. I always learn something new. I always see something that maybe I could tweak and introduce into my repertoire. He is the one guy that I could watch. If I just want to watch pro wrestling, Chris Ford as a fan, I'll watch Macho Man. Chris Ford, the wrestler, I could also watch Macho Man and still learn something every single time.
Sure, sure. Now, I'm kind of going to be bouncing around a little bit, but I'm interested. Did you ever get to meet Macho Man? Did you ever get to really work with him? Did you get to tell him any of this, how you felt about his style?
Very, very briefly, when they brought me into WCW the first time, when I was doing the cruiserweight stuff, I had a match with Chris Kanyon. I had a match with Eddie Guerrero. I wrestled Conan on Nitro. I met him briefly backstage. He was making a coffee, and I just said, "Hey, Randy, really big fan, huge fan, real honor to meet you." And he said, "Hey, nice to meet you." And that was it, really. At that point in time, those guys, those top guys, they were changing by themselves. They were off in their own dressing room and stuff like that. But I wish I could have gotten to work with him and speak to him more. But that was the extent of my one-on-one interaction with Randy Savage. And yeah, it was still awesome.
Sure.
Still grateful for it.
No, absolutely. So we talked about like you being able to see it and who some of your favorites were. Do you also remember, like, sometimes people feel like they have a calling or something like that. Do you remember the moment when you decided that you were all in and you were gonna become a pro wrestler?
It would have to be around, I'd say, 7th or 8th grade. At that time, there were a lot of wrestling magazines out. There was The Wrestler, Pro Wrestling Illustrated, and all kinds of wrestling magazines at the, you go to like the corner store, the magazine store, or the places like that. And I vividly remember picking up one, and it had a spotlight on Larry Sharp's Monster Factory in Paulsboro, New Jersey. A little far from me, especially 7th and 8th grade. I'm not driving yet, but I never knew how these guys learned, and that was the first reveal to me. Oh, wow, there are schools that you go to, and that's how you learn to be a pro wrestler. So then I have to find a way to get to a school, and Paulsboro is about 2 hours south of me. So I'm thinking, even if I could con my parents to drive me down there, it's a little far fetched to go 2 hours, 2, 3, 4 days a week. But that let me know that that's how you do it. There are schools, and that's how you learn. Later on, and I explain this to people that it's meant to be. I didn't find a pro wrestling school. A pro wrestling school found me. There's a very convoluted story, and I'm going to give you the cliff notes. My sister's ex-husband, her brother-in-law, his brother. So my brother-in-law's brother worked in this area somewhere, and he was some kind of a laborer, and he met a guy, and he knew what a huge wrestling fan I was, and that I would one day want to be a pro wrestler. And this had to be probably my sophomore year of high school, or either end of my freshman year of high school or sophomore year of high school. I think sophomore year of high school. And there was this huge factory building here. And he goes, I met a guy in there. There's a shop in there called General Bicycle. And I guess he had bicycle parts, bicycle repair shops, wheels, whatever have you. And he said he's going to be opening up a wrestling school with Iron Mike Sharp. Wow. In Bricktown, New Jersey. Still about an hour 15, but an hour 15 is a whole lot closer than 2 hours,
Sure.
2-3 days a week. You know what I'm saying? So I put my Walkman on, and I take a walk to this factory warehouse type building. I meet Tom Rumsby, he lets me know that in about 3/4 of a year from that time, he's going to be opening up a school with Iron Mike Sharp. And right then, it found me. I had no idea how I was going to be a pro wrestler. It somehow, the universe aligned, and through my sister's ex-husband's brother, it gets back to me that Tom Rumsby is going to be opening up a pro wrestling school an hour and 15 or so south of me. So I know then and there, this is going to happen. It's real. I know where I'm going to go. And even at that young age, I was able to realize pro wrestling found me. This is meant to be.
Sure.
So I went to work at a local catering hall that did like weddings, graduations, bar mitzvahs, big hall. And I worked Friday nights. I did double shifts on Saturday and Sunday, and I just worked like crazy to earn that money where I could go to Iron Mike Sharp's wrestling school. And fast forward, like almost a year later or so, whatever it was, I became Iron Mike Sharp's first student ever.
That's incredible. It's one of those things, you obviously hindsight's 2020, and we hear about, people breaking into the business and things that happened, and, people breaking people's legs, and people, really teaching them, that wrestling is a very physical, form of entertainment. What was that culture like for you when you got there? Did you feel like that people were taking advantage, or did you feel through your training that you actually were, put through in a respectful way?
Well, I was Mike's first student when he didn't have a lot of students. So Mike was always super, super nice. I've always known him when he was live as a super, super nice guy. And you probably wouldn't want to beat up your first student. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
he's trying to keep the lights on. Do I think he laid into us? Don't get me wrong. Like he chops you, he lays stuff in. There's a difference between being snug and injuring somebody. The big difference.
Sure.
And Mike was snug. Mike made us tough. He trained us tough, but he never did anything to injure us. So I've heard that that's gone on a lot of other places, a lot of other schools, but it wasn't my experience at Iron Mike Sharp School.
Good. And this is just always something interesting to me. So obviously everyone has goals and thoughts about whatever. Like when that first day that you got into that ring, or as it started, did you kind of set goals or like have a bucket list of like, if I could just do this, I'll be happy, or if I could just do that? Like, what were some of those things early on that you were just hoping that you would be able to accomplish in wrestling?
I say about a half a year before I went to Mike Sharp School in my hometown, there's a college. At that time, it was called Fairleigh Dickinson University. It's now been bought out, and now it's Felicia University. And a friend of mine was in the boxing community. His dad was in the boxing community, and he knew Ted Petty, Rocco Rock, with the Cheetah Kid. I had seen him in magazines and stuff like that, but he frequently did the rings. Like he would wrestle on the show, and he also had rings that he set up with his crew. So he got a ring rental, and he also performed. So my friend from school's dad was friends with him, and he happened to have free tickets to an independent show at Fairleigh Dickinson University. And at that time, I had never seen an independent show. I had heard of them. I had read about them in the wrestling magazine, but I'd never been to one. And being up that close to it in a college gymnasium, it was not a big college. Like you said, it was a small college, maybe the size of a high school gymnasium, maybe a little bit bigger. Being that up close and seeing how hard these guys worked, I knew I was planning on going to pro wrestling school, but I was so blown away by this show. I said, if I could just do this on a somewhat regular basis, I'd be thrilled. In the back of your head, you would love to go to WWF,
Yeah.
WCW, USWA. I watched them all. I was watching them all. IWCCW, the Savolis. I would have been happy to go there, but I wasn't sure if that was within the realm of possibility. At that time, a lot of the wrestlers were really, really big guys. I was not a guy of that stature. I was also a late bloomer. I was a little bit of a heavy kid and stuff like that. So, which is one of the reasons why early on in my career, I covered my body up, because I just did not have that physique. I was trying to learn my craft while I grew into my body. So at that point, I saw that show. I was blown away. I love it. I go, wow, if I could do this once in a while, I'd be thrilled. Just doing an independent show. And then I actually go to Mike Sharp's for the first time. He has a small ring. It's a boxing ring, a low profile ring, which some of the guys have pet peeves. When you show up at a show and it's a low profile ring, it's a little deflating. It just doesn't look as top notch. You know what I mean? It's, well, but at that time, it was a low profile boxing ring in a strip mall, and climbing up on that apron, stepping through those ropes, to this day was one of the most surreal. I get teary once in a while when I talk about it. Getting in a ring for the first time was one of the most surreal, incredible experiences of my life, and I'll never ever forget it. What it was like to get in there, and across the ring from me was Iron Mike Sharp, who, you know, people say that watch him on TV, he was a, you know, enhancement guy. This was a guy you saw almost every week on WWF.
Sure.
He happened to be on this show at Fairleigh Dickinson University, and Mike Sharp on an independent show, way different than Mike Sharp on Saturday morning WWF. Mike Sharp on a WWE house show. If you go back and watch Old School on the classics on the network, way different wrestler than you saw on Saturday morning when they needed 3, 4, 5 minute match. So climbing in there across the Mike Sharp, incredible, surreal, flash phobe moment that I will never. I remember how the place looked. I remember the lighting. I remember how the place smelled. Mike Sharp had baby oil on, like he was going to be training at the Garden. He really protected the business. When I go to work out at a wrestling ring, I wear sweats or shorts, put on my elbow pads, my knee pads, what have you. I go like I'm working out. And that's how most people go. And this didn't stand out as odd to me because I had no point of reference. But Mike Sharp, when he trained us at Mike Sharp's school, he dressed as if he was going out there for a match at Garden. Black trunks, black boots. He often would wear the forearm band, oiled up. So I don't know if that was just him because he was very OCD as well, or if he was trying to protect the business in front of the new guys that may or may not stick with it and maybe quit and tell people whatever. I'm really not sure. But I remember that night. I remember the lighting. I remember the look. I remember the smell. I remember so many things about that moment. I remember getting in there. It was a boxing ring, so there was very little give. So they had extra mats. Stepping into the mats, and it was hard but squishy. You know, like in 2024, I was like, oh my God, I never want to bump into this thing. It's real dangerous. But I remember everything about that moment.
Sure. And so obviously we're going to just skip a little bit here and there, but
sure, man.
You know, again, you have been, I would say, just super important in the fact that you didn't just wrestle for one place; you've wrestled for a lot of places, and the one that I wanted to kind of touch on a little bit right now was just was WCW. That's where I was first introduced to you. Was during your time in WCW, and it's no secret that they've been putting out this show recently, which is called The Death of WCW. And I just wanted to see if you've watched any of it. They've done a lot of these shows, The Dark Side and all of that. And obviously all of that has its place in wrestling, but I just wanted to see, because you were there, this is a rare opportunity to get to talk to somebody who was actually there, that because some people have agendas and things like that, but you seem very forthcoming. So I wanted to see if you'd been watching it, and then kind of go through a few of the things about WCW.
I have not seen it. And people have asked me about that topic, though, the death of WCW, yada, yada, yada. And it sounds like a cop-out, but those that know me know it's 100% the truth. I'll say it to this day, I am the world's biggest wrestling fan, bigger than anybody else. And as I expressed before, I would have been thrilled just to be doing an independent show once, twice a month and doing that. In the back of my head, it would have been incredible to go to WWF, WCW, USWA, whatever. Did I really expect it? Deep down, there was something that told me I would, and it sounds corny to say that, but that gets overtaken by the reality of that. There's really not a good shot at that. I had 3 separate stints. One when I was full-time in school. That was when I did the cruiserweight stuff. I left that, went to ECW for a year, went back to WCW doing cruiserweight and like tag matches with Ace Darling, my partner, who still my best friend to this day, great guy. Then we both left there, went to WWF to do the light heavyweight division there. And but when I was there during my last run, Dallas Page became a great friend of mine. He took interest in what I was doing. He was very genuine, great guy. And he said, you got a lot of talent, working really hard. You're getting better and better and better. And again, little aside here, wrestling wasn't like it is now. You could see a guy on AEW, either the, whatever the Ring of Honor or the main show, and they could get squashed or jobbed out here or there. And eventually, the management will say, wait, this guy got some talent. Let's do something with this guy.
Sure.
Way back when, if you were doing enhancement matches, job matches over and over and over again, it was very, very difficult to get out of that job guy role. You became typecast. And Dallas Page came up to me. He goes, how much more school you got left? I go, on about a year or so. He goes, you're working really hard. You get a lot of experience. He goes, but if you don't get out of here right now, you're going to get typecast in that job guy role. He told me that.
Yeah.
He goes, go finish school, go keep brushing up on your in-ring work on your body more. And when you're ready, drop me a line. And if I can help you, I will. So I left there. I did the WWF light heavyweight division. I graduated. I worked in a hospital for about a year. I got myself in better shape. I really worked on my pro wrestling, being crisper, being sharper, this, that, and the other thing. And I forget what year it is. You'd have to look it up. One year, Dallas Page did a show in Asbury Park, New Jersey. I forget what the charity was for. I think it was some kind of children's charity. And it was essentially a WCW show. Mm-hmm. Dallas, the Giant, guys like that, all the top guys were there. So I took a ride down. I had a VHS tape. For those of you who know what that still is, I had a VHS tape of my more recent stuff with some promos. You saw that I had gotten into shape. I gave it to him, and then a few months later, I remember coming back from a night out with my girlfriend, and again, I remember exactly how I was sounded on an old school answering machine. Dev, it's Page. I got you a deal. I need you to get down here to get sharp, though. Call me back. And I was, and my eyes welled up. I couldn't believe it that I'm going. I told my parents. I gave notice at my job. I was a full-time physical therapist at that time, and I made plans to pack my life up and go to Atlanta. He wanted me to go to the power plant just to make sure. Although I got much better, he wanted me even better. He was putting his name on the line. He recommended me. He got me the job, and I was more than happy to go down and become even better at that time.
Yeah, I mean, and somebody's stamp of approval with like Paige, with his name behind it, that had to mean something. So while like WCW had a huge illustrious, I think people just, especially around my age, we kind of tend to look at WCW as like this amount of time, but it had a very large history. So growing up and even yeah, go ahead.
I forgot where we were. So by the way, I had the worst ADD on the planet. So I totally forgot. We were talking about WCW death, and it sounds like a cop out, but I had gone there before. And so I had a few stints, and a lot of people ask what caused the death of it. Did you experience this or that? What was going on politically? Did you see it coming? And I can honestly say no. I had graduated physical therapy school. I had a degree that I could do the rest of my life. That is set. I had gotten this opportunity to go to WCW, become a pro wrestler for this company, and my mind was blown just by that. I was so thrilled to be there as a talent. Every day was Christmas. I didn't get caught up in who's doing what with what. Whatever creative asked me to do, I did. I was just thrilled to be there. So I really never, being there, I had been a pro wrestler for a while, but I was still very, very naive and just enjoying myself because I knew that it could be finite, that, it might last a year, might last 2 years, might last 3, could be more, but it will end someday unless you're a real top tier superstar, where you're there for years and years and years and years. And I made it my business to enjoy my entire time there and really just effing enjoy that ride. And I did.
Awesome. And as a fan of WCW, and as a performer of WCW, what were some of your like favorite? And for me, like, I'm just very interested in the stories of like, we got to see in ring, we got to see that stuff, but what are some of the things that you'll always take with you from your time in WCW?
One of the biggest ones is as a fan, as I got older and in high school and actually became a pro wrestler, I was training. I enjoyed watching ECW and I enjoyed watching WCW. Prior to that, I was a big fan of Terry Funk, huge fan of Terry Funk. And I say this every time I speak of him. One of the matches that really stood out for me was him against Flair, Clash of the Champions, the New York Knockout, I Quit match. That was a hardcore match before hardcore was a term. That was hardcore before it was called hardcore, and I loved the match. And what I loved about it is they wrestled, they brawled, they used weapons, but they used weapons that, what I say, when I speak about, I hate garbage wrestling. They used weapons that naturally occurred at ringside. They used a rail. There was a chair. They had an announcer's table that they use. Now, announce tables are these gigantic things. You can't put them in the ring or anything else. So I've come to accept the fact that for whatever reason, it's been grandfathered in that underneath a wrestling ring, there just happens to be stacked folding tables. They just got to be there. But they use microphone wires. They use the rails. They use the chairs. They use naturally occurring things at ringside, and that match drew me in. Then I saw him in ECW, became an even bigger fan of him. Then fast forward to the last Starrcade, I have the hardcore belt, which, like again, being me, that's mind blowing by itself. But I'm wrestling Terry Funk for the hardcore title on Starrcade, which for people that don't know is essentially WCW's version of WrestleMania, and that was amazing. That was pretty awesome, pretty special. I wrestled as Vampiro a few times, and I loved working with him. We had really good chemistry. It was a lot of fun. One of my best matches was on Worldwide that nobody's probably ever seen. You can probably find it on YouTube. I had a great match with Alan Funk, who became the Kiwi. And it was one of my best matches there. It was on Worldwide. Alan was a great friend of mine. It's always fun to have a great match. It's even more fun when you have a great match with somebody that's your friend and you really click with. So, those are, just a few of those really incredible matches. Booker T, Chris Benoit, I had a match with him, which was awesome. Kidman, there's just so many, let the name just a few. The whole ride was just awesome.
That's fantastic. And I think it's rare. I think it's much easier to, be negative. I think sometimes you can always find something negative to say, but I think it's really awesome that
Why?
That's
Why?
that's not you. And I feel similarly like that. If that's your dream and you got to achieve that, then everything else is just whatever. But it's so cool. So
one of the coolest things that I got to do recently was there's this brewery nearby my house that they run independent shows at. Outlaw Wrestling runs there often. They also do wrestling trivia here and there. And I had saw that Eric Bischoff was going to be there. Eric Bischoff signed my first contract. He was also the guy that fired me before the sale of WCW to WWF. And a lot of people give Eric flack. This is a good thing. I always knew wrestling was finite, that it could end whatever. He opened that door for me. I really never went out a lot. I saved almost every dime that I made there. You know what I mean? And that money that I made with WCW enabled me to put a nice down payment on my first house and still leave money in the bank for me to do other things like get married and actually have a little nest egg to start up my business, my physical therapy business. So I didn't need to take a loan, which was huge. So it felt so good because you see guys, look, they always talk bad about the guy that fired you. He was under no obligation to hire me in the first place. And I always make this analogy. I'm a huge Star Wars fan. Unless you're Luke, Han, Leia, R2, or Darth Vader, you're not going to be in all the movies and all the stories. You're not.
Yeah.
And I was happy to have my spot there. So it was great where they kind of had like an open mic situation, and I asked to come up, and I gave this. The fans thought I was going to say some shit. I go, Eric Bischoff hired me WCW. He also fired me from WCW. And they thought it was going to go downhill. And I basically gave that same explanation. But it felt so good in person to express it to Eric Bischoff what a profound effect that he had on my life. He gave me a head start that enabled me to do many, many great things on top of just granting me the opportunity to live out my life of being a professional wrestler. So I can never say a bad thing about that guy. He was instrumental in how my life would ultimately shape itself and go this way or that way. And it's just awesome guy. And it felt good to let this guy know what a positive influence and what the opportunity he gave to me provided for me.
Well, and I'm assuming that he enjoyed it as well, because as you mentioned, it's kind of become a thing over the years to kind of dunk on Eric Bischoff for any number of reasons, but that's such a great story. So
Look at what he did. All my situation aside,
yeah,
look at what he did. The first guy to ever beat WWF. I remember watching Nitro when it was 1 hour, then 2 hours. It was an incredible show. And all things run their course, unfortunately. Things get hot, things get cold. Talent gets hot and cold. That's why we're all not there for the duration unless you're Ric Flair, unless you're Hulk Hogan. Things change. You can't be hot constantly. It just doesn't happen.
yeah, that's not it's an anomaly when it does, for sure. So and I want to kind of put a pin in the WCW after this, just because but during your run in WCW, as you mentioned, well, your last run in WCW, you were a multi-time champion. You had many different things going on, and then one of the things that really stuck out to me was your teaming with David Flair and Daphne, and
Yes.
I look back on that fondly. I can't imagine how you do, but how did that? I mean, to anybody who wasn't watching, like if somebody just watches right now, it may seem kind of like thrown together, but how did that actually come about?
I had been on the Saturday night show as Devon Storm, kind of a updated gothy version of myself. And I was being groomed as this next cruiserweight that would come up to the main roster. A little bit bigger, did some crazy stuff, would sometimes use the steps, would dive off the apron. So a more aggressive, cheating, evil cruiserweight guy. And I thought I was thrilled to be doing that. And that was great. And then from what I could gather, as the story goes, David Flair, although he was not a strong in-ring performer, he was drawing ratings. But people were interested in seeing the backstage the antics where he would stalk women and attack people with weapons and this and that. And he was this crazy guy that people enjoyed watching. The only limitation was, like I said, not a strong in-ring performer. So what do? So they get him the valet, the girlfriend, Daphne, but he still can't wrestle that well. So they come up with an idea. We'll put him in a tag team with a stronger in-ring performer that could do the majority of the wrestling, so that people still get to see David Flair in a ring. He has some time to actually learn and get better, and we can see how this works. And there you go. I had done was a WCW Saturday night in Vail, Colorado. I had wrestled in the same night, Chris Benoit and then Booker T. Chris Benoit and I got the highest rating on a WCW Saturday night show that they had seen in years and years and years.
Wow.
So that was a real feather in my cap for me. They had been building me up on Saturday night, and I kind of got a following on that Saturday night crowd, this cruiserweight guy. And it was wrestling guys like Kidman, Vampiro, Mike Sanders, Chuck Palumbo, Jamie Noble was one of the matches that I had there. And then it went on to become Chris Benoit and then Booker T, which happened. I just had a killer match with Chris Benoit, which you can find on YouTube. And then I believe Norman Smiley had car trouble or got in a car accident, and they needed somebody to work Booker. They go, and you're in Vail, Colorado now, thin air. Just did a killer match with Chris Benoit. I'm exhausted, but elated that we just did this awesome thing. They go, you want to work Booker? And it's literally 20 minutes from there. I go, yeah, let's do it. So I went right back out and had a match with Booker T. And it was shortly after that I went home. And during that time, I know that Jimmy Hart, who ran WCW Saturday Night, was pushing for me to do this cruiserweight thing, but also be associated with Vampiro in some way, shape, or form, where maybe I would do cruiser stuff, but then we might tag or be affiliated. So I got home. I got a call from for the flight. We need you to do it in Salisbury, Maryland. You're going to be doing something with David Flair, with Daffy, with Vampiro, and the Misfits. You know, he was with the Misfits at the time, with the punk band. So I thought that I would be going with Vampiro because Jimmy Hart had been had really been pushing for that for a while. So I get down there, and it's Vampiro and the Misfits are chasing David and Daphne in a car, and they go into a gas station, and I'm going to be the guy pumping the gas. And there's this whole dialogue where I reveal to David Flair that some people call me Crowbar. At that time, he had been backstage whacking people with a crowbar, so we connect on some psychotic level. Vampiro comes in, beats up David Flair. I make the save with a giant pipe, and the next week we're tag champs. It's nuts.
It's such a fun story, and I think that's one of my favorite things about that time frame is just that, you know, there wasn't so much internet, there wasn't so much everybody trying to figure out what was going to happen, and so you really truly didn't know what was going to happen. And I remember I was a channel flipper, so I would be watching WWE and then go back to WCW and back and forth, and so that was
we all were.
Yeah, it was such a fun time.
That's just what you did. That's what you did.
Yeah. And I think this is one of my favorite things about doing these things is just getting the real stories from people that actually lived it. And I was doing some research, and obviously it's funny, like Wikipedia, but Wikipedia, on Wikipedia, it mentions that you're one of just a few other people that have not only wrestled for WWF, but WCW, ECW, TNA, Ring of Honor, and also AEW. Now, I talked to you a little bit earlier.
Japan too.
And okay, so we need to add that to Wikipedia if you're listening.
You want to count them, and if you want to count, there's MLW, and I did the Flair's last match show, which could technically be Jim Crockett Promotions.
Wow. So just hearing yourself say those things and thinking about that kid that was in, like, with his Walkman walking to this warehouse, how does that, I mean, that has to just be surreal to you that you did all of that.
I feel nothing but grateful and gratitude. I don't get too preachy.
Yeah.
Thank you, God.
Yeah.
There's nothing but gratitude and nothing but being grateful. And I'm even more grateful that I'm able to still do it at a competitive level because I fucking love pro wrestling more than anybody else on this planet. That's so awesome.
And I don't want to keep you too long because we already have, but you know, you just brought it up. You've been able to do it for at such a high level for such a long time. Like, you know, we see other wrestlers that come in, they get injured, maybe their careers cut short. What do you attribute to, like, your ability to be in this for, you know, so long? What's your regimen? How do you do that?
A huge part of it is my physical therapy background. Without getting too deep into the woods, like I'm going to try to. Pro wrestlers have always taken bumps, and I've taken some crazy bumps, and I feel relatively good. It's knowing what to do all of those times when you're not taking the bumps, I think, makes a difference. In physical therapy, I see a lot of neck patients, a lot of low back patients. Very, very often the things that knock people out of pro wrestling and make them retire is low back and neck. You break a hand, you could fix that. You blow out a knee, you could fix that. You break a bone, very often, you can fix that. The back and neck are often the things that put people out. And is part of it the bumps? Sure. But as a physical therapist of 26 years now,
wow.
The majority of the people that I see with neck and back problems, they're not heavy laborers. They're not weightlifters. They're not athletes. They're not landscapers. They're not construction workers. They're people that sit all day. And as a society, again, without getting too deep into the woods, extended, long time sitting posture in either a monitor or on your phone, driving in a car from show to show, driving in a car, then sitting at an airport waiting for your flight, getting on an airport to sit again, destroys our discs. That's what does it. It messes up our discs. It makes our hip flexors tight, which pull on our low back. And I believe it's all the things we do. The bumps are part of it, but if you just bumped and you took care of yourself following that bump, that bad bump is going to have less of an impact on your body. Sure. But if you sit extended periods of time, and that's what we do as a society, we sit, but especially pro wrestlers, we drive to the airport, we check in, we're waiting for a flight, we sit down at the airport, we get on the plane, we sit on the plane, we get off the plane, get a rent-a-car, sit in the rent-a-car. We go to the building if it's the day of TV. They usually want you there at noontime or so. So we go to TV, we go to catering, and what do? We sit at catering. We sit in the locker room. We sit in the buildings. A lot of the wrestlers, part of our business is our social media. So we're sitting down, hunched over, doing the social media, and we're destroying our backs and necks. That's a huge part of it. And I've been able to manage a lot of those things. I have to do a lot of notes at work. A huge part of physical therapy is not just the physical therapy; it's the documentation. I have a standing desk. I come home and I watch with the TV. I don't sit on with the sofa or with the love seat or recliner. I lay down flat so that my back is flat. All these little things, habitual things. If I have a bunch of documentation to do and I don't want to stand, if I'm sitting, I'll get up every 10 to 12 minutes, walk around for 30 seconds just to break that extended seating the position. I use decompression a lot. I hang upside down. I do a lot of decompressive things for wrestling. That's a huge part of it. And also not just low back and neck, but any injury. A lot of wrestlers don't like to go to doctors. A lot of wrestlers, unfortunately, don't have insurance. Some do, some don't. A lot of wrestlers are very proficient in the gym, and they think being proficient and knowledgeable in the weight room makes you able to heal your own injuries. And it's apples and oranges. It's not the same thing. And a lot of these guys, unfortunately, make their problems worse by doing exercises that aren't good for whatever they did. And that's a huge part of it, too. So my body of knowledge in physical therapy has helped me tremendously. It helped me with my neck and back. It helps me when I do get hurt, knowing what to do and how to manage that injury so it doesn't become a bigger injury. It helps me if I'm hurt or injured, but I have a show, what to do and what not to do to make it look like I'm still having a great match, but I'm still protecting that injured part there. Sure. So there's a lot that goes into it. And then that's a huge reason why I'm able to still do it. And a huge part of it too is I'm a very big believer in safety. People go, oh, he's running down the young talent. Work your friggin' ass off. Work like crazy. Put everything you have into it. But when it comes time to doing certain stunts, some of the younger kids put no thought into it, and they just do it, and what will be, will be. Whenever there is at least, I'd say 4 or 5 times throughout my career when I was younger and was just worried about getting over where God was with me, I should be dead from a stupid stunt. And for whatever reason, I'm meant to be here still. But it was just because I was young. I didn't have a family, so I wasn't thinking about that and wife and kids. So being a married guy with a wife and with kids and with a business, I still want to work super, super hard. And if you watch my videos, a lot of my stuff looks nuts, but to a trained eye, it's very calculated. It's very, very safe. And I think that has also helped my career and has enabled me to still perform at this high level at 50 years old and 33 and a half years doing this.
That's incredible. We got just a few more, and we're going to get you out of here. And these are, feel free to be as whatever you want to do with these. I'm going to do just some rapid fire things. So you said you're still a big fan of professional wrestling, and so my question is, who is your favorite person to watch today that's currently active?
Currently active. I like watching the guys that are in my camp. So I love watching Jericho. Love watching Dustin. Love watching Rob Van Dam, Rey Mysterio, guys like that. Of the younger guys, I love watching Matt Hardy, especially Matt Hardy is a new guy in TNA now. He's a totally different entity. He's amazing again. It's great. Matt and Jeff Hardy, guys in my camp. I love watching guys in my camp doing the things and seeing what they're doing and seeing, hey, how am I hanging in comparison with these guys? It's just fun. It's a good drive. I love being a base. I would love to work with Darby Allin. I love the stuff he does, and I guarantee you that if I ever did, the match would look violently incredible, and he would come out unscathed. Guarantee you, he would come out unscathed. Really enjoy watching him. I like taking big bumps. I like what's his name? Damn it! No disrespect intended. Murder Hawk Monster, that guy. I love Jake something. I just recently had the honor to work with Mike Speedball Bailey. I would love to work with him again. That was a lot of fun. There's so many guys. But I really like watching guys that are in my camp. When I watch wrestling for myself as a fan, this was it. I love wrestling in the time frame, I'd say 1989 to like 93, 94.
Okay.
Where I really like that crust of time, that encampment of time there. And that's where Chris Ford as a fan loves watching wrestling. I happen to also find a lot of stuff there that's, I call total forgotten, buried treasures. Not just moves, but transitions that I will bring out and use into modern wrestling. I like that. I as a fan, I enjoy that wrestling more. I think it was better. I enjoy the characters better as a fan. But I'm also still a current professional wrestler. I enjoy professional. I want to perform on a modern level. So you have to either evolve or go extinct. And although that's what I like very much, like people say, what do you watch? It's the wrestling that I like as a fan looks very much like the pro wrestling that Jim Cornette would like.
Yes.
I like that type of wrestling. But I want to continue to exist in the pro wrestling world. I enjoy doing it. So I have to evolve and modify my style to be more what I call modernly acceptable. I don't want to go on the show, be the veteran guy, yay, boo, this and that. And guys do that, and that's great. That's their business. I like to be modernly acceptable athletically, not just going out there. So I like old wrestling. That's what I like as a fan, but I watch a lot of modern wrestling whenever I can, especially when I'm going to have a match with somebody. I will watch hours of their stuff. Mike Speedball Bailey, I was aware of him. I knew he was awesome. He just puts me, his body control in space is amazing. But when I found out that I was going to have a match, I did a really deep dive into his stuff. So when do I do this? Because I have no time. Whenever I do, if I'm doing cardio, I'm probably watching some kind of wrestling. It's either for myself or I'm scouting my opponent. So, So if that makes sense, I like the old stuff, but I have to evolve, and I watch a lot of new stuff too, just so that I can be proficient when I work somebody that is of this new school genre.
Absolutely. You mentioned it earlier, big fan of Star Wars. That's awesome. It's a whole nother
Of course.
there. So I'm just gonna, because I don't want to butcher anything, and I definitely don't want to make any Star Wars fans, especially you, mad. So what I would like to do is just out of the original three, the ones Empire, Jedi, what is your favorite of the original, what I call the original trilogy?
Okay. For years, I said Empire. For all the reasons everybody likes Empire. There's many, many reasons like Empire. But then I was hanging out with Danny Doring and Roadkill, and we were all talking Star Wars. We were always talking Star Wars. And then you really, outside of the movie, I looked into being a kid and the emotions and everything that you felt with Return of the Jedi. Watching Empire now, incredible movie. I used to think it was the best, but when I connect thoughts and emotions that I had at that age, movies were like they are now. They came out years apart, and you waited. There was really no behind the scenes dirt coming out. You didn't know what they were about. You didn't know where the story was going. So I waited online for hours at a movie theater to see Return of the Jedi. And then you think of all of the payoffs that Jedi gave you. Luke made a new lightsaber. It's a green lightsaber. That's cool. Now, for the people that don't know, when the original Star Wars came out, Jabba the Hutt was not in A New Hope. He was not in that scene where they were outside the cantina. That scene was not there. So you heard about Jabba the Hutt in A New Hope. You heard about him in Empire. You know Boba Fett froze him to bring him to Jabba the Hutt, but you've heard all this about this guy, but you've never seen him. So for the first time, you get to see this gigantic space slug, and he's friggin' awesome. So you get to see that. The Sarlacc pit is cool. You find out when Luke speaks to Ben that Anakin is indeed his father. It's true. You find out Luke and Leia are brothers, sisters, which is a little weird because they kiss. That is weird. Luke fights Darth Vader, and unlike Empire, he's kicking his ass. Yeah. He's tapping into some dark side stuff. You see the Emperor in the flesh for the first time. You know, in Empire, he's the hologram. In Return of the Jedi, you see him, and he has this new power you've never seen before. He's shooting lightning out of his fingers, which is awesome. Darth Vader turns good. He saves his son. He takes his mask off. He becomes a Force ghost back with the good ghosts again, and he's totally redeemed. So when you connect all those payoffs and all the emotions you felt during that, I had to go back and say it's Return of the Jedi.
I agree.
And that's why.
I agree. Yeah. We agree on that for sure. And so I can't thank you enough for joining us today, taking so much time out of your busy schedule. I'm local, so I get to go around and see a lot of these shows. What do you have going coming up, and where can fans keep up with you?
June the 29th, I will be at the Meadowlands Racetrack with the Meadowlands in East Rutherford, New Jersey. I believe the following week is at the ECW Arena for Battleground. I love working there. They have such great talent there, too, and such great production. The arena is really great with their production and lighting and all that. I have a lot of fun there. And then July 17th, I believe it is, Atlantic City, New Jersey for 90s Con and also a show. Not quite sure who my opponent is yet. I have a couple ideas, but nothing is set in stone yet. And if you want to follow me, like I said, life is so crazy. I keep Facebook mostly for like my business and town and family stuff. I put some wrestling up up on there here and there. I have an Instagram that I really don't post on much because I just don't have time. I'm usually on X at WCW Crowbar. That's where I mainly hang because I'm very familiar with the app now, and it's just really quick for me. So that's really my main thing there.
Well, again, I want to thank you so much. I think I know the answer to this question for myself, but I would love to hear what your thoughts are. So,
Sure.
You're a heck of a nice guy. I mean, this is our first time meeting, but it feels like we've known each other for a long time, and I always appreciate the people that are so kind to fans and people who like wrestling. And so, what do you think that the legacy of Devon Storm, Crowbar, Salem? I'm going to go back to Deep Cut, Salem.
Yeah. Wow.
What do you think that legacy, or what do you hope your legacy will be in pro wrestling?
I think within the business, and even fans that follow it, I hope one day they'll say, whenever it's all done, Chris Ford effing loved pro wrestling. I do it not because I have to, and I'm not being snarky at all. I have a great business. I have a great life. I've been blessed very much with my business and my physical therapy. I'm surrounded by loved ones, families, and friends that say, "Why do you still do this? What are you effing stupid? What?" And they just don't get it. I genuinely love pro wrestling since I was about that high. I'm grateful and loaded with gratitude that I was blessed enough to be able to pursue it and do it and be a part of all those companies that we spoke about, and even more blessed and thrilled that I'm able to do it to this day with my wife still, who I met in pro wrestling. My very good friend, Adam Payne, who is like the bodyguard / tag team partner in our little clique we got going there. He's under the name of Percival. He walked into my clinic as a patient. I had my glasses on. He had no idea who I was. I knew he was a wrestling fan. We bonded, and whether it's good or not, who knows? I introduced him into this crazy world of pro wrestling. But the fact that I get to do it at 50 years old, I think at a great level, and I'm not throwing rocks. I think I'm doing it at a superior level than a lot of guys my age. And there's absolutely zero pressure on it. I'm doing it because I generally love it. I'm having so much fun now. WCW was great. All those times were great. But the fact that there is zero pressure, zero anything, I'm having so much fun now. And I have the freedom to be as creative as I want to be, shoot the promos I want to shoot, have fun with it. But at the end of the day, I think people say that guy fucking loved wrestling and he just did it until he couldn't do it at a respectable level anymore. Not even respectable. When I can't do it at a friggin' good level no more, I'm done. And people will say, Chris Ford fucking loved wrestling. He loved it so much more than anybody else. And when he couldn't do it, and when he couldn't do that sport, the art form, justice, he just stepped away. And that was it.
Well, it's a super inspiring to get to talk to you. And again, we just want to thank you for not only taking the time out today, but your body of work in professional wrestling and being such a fan. Man. It's incredible. Please go out, see Crowbar wherever you can. And we look forward to meeting you too, hopefully soon. And thank you.
Man, Sue. Hope so.
Yeah, we'll see you down the road. Thanks so much.
We're going to talk a little bit about Who Killed WCW. Have you been watching it?
Oh my God! So, how did you come across this?
Well, you mentioned it.
I don't know if you had known before I told you.
I thought it was just like a special on something else. I didn't realize it was going to be episodic, and I thought it was. I didn't even know what. I saw like a brief glimpse of it once, and I didn't know what the full.
Yeah, buddy
was.
Shapiro texted it to me, and the first thing was because he thinks of you. He tries to sell things on. It's the first time I saw an interview with Bret Hart where he wasn't crying about the screw job, and he actually came across halfway decent. He was still bitter Brett, but they did a great job of editing out certain things so he didn't look totally pompous and arrogant. You know what I mean? So I watched the first 2 episodes. Those are the only 2 that have dropped, and I think they're doing a great job. I think Guy Evans is involved with this. Guy Evans wrote a book that basically details like the death of WCW, but the people that he interviewed in that book, and I found out about this on Bischoff's podcast.
Yeah.
But I mean, he interviewed people from within Turner and Time Warner, and they have a better understanding of what was happening business wise. And I mean, it's a great read. I forget the name. I think it's The Death of WCW by Guy Evans. Great book.
Yeah.
I mean, I have read it. It is amazing.
No, it's just from seeing the first 2 episodes, I kind of got because I really love what WWE did with the Raw, the Raw's War stories with WCW versus Raw, the whole Monday Night Wars and all that. I liked it reminded me a little bit about that, but minus Raw. It was just all focused on WCW with little, just reaching out there to like finding out what's going on. I feel there's a lot of stories that we've seen before, like from Who Took Over, but we're kind of hearing a little bit more into it. So I don't know. All these are interesting because it's a time that we were like young marks. We were like 18 years old. This is happening. We're in the height of it right now. And while this was going on, so we didn't even have you couldn't just go to Google. I don't think at that time. I'm trying to remember. You could go online, but it was like chat rooms and other weird stuff. But it wasn't
message boards and shit like that.
Yeah, and that's really outdating us. But
the other great thing about this though is that with this series running, I've noticed that a lot of these people do have podcasts, and they have been talking about it on their shows. And I think Nash has talked about it. I think Busted Open had Medusa on earlier in the week. Boy, that was an interview and a half. I mean, she's a great interview, but I mean, she reminds me of a female Bret Hart. Very bitter, and a lot of these people have the right to be. And I mean, she said that she got signed for $75,000 a year while other people are making like 6-7 figure contracts. Wow. Yeah, you got paid $75,000 to dump that belt in the trash on live television. Think about that.
No, that was so I'm just going back to even finding out WCW 2 as a kid, even reminiscing even farther back than that. I mean, we grew up on WWE, WWF, Hogan, Warrior, the height of the 80s wrestling. And, when I first found out WCW, I think I was going into a KB toy store. No, I know this for sure. It was KB toy store at the Duchess Mall in Fishkill, New York.
Oh my God.
And, I collected a lot of toys, 80s, action figures from Turtles to WWE wrestlers. But now this particular day, Cooter, I walked in and they had WCW figures, and I've never seen them before because I'm in my head, the only wrestling was WWF. Right. So I walked in, I saw these WCW figures, and Sting was the best out of whoever else was on the rack that day. But I remember it, and I have it. I should bring it in. But he has the aqua shorts and then the old Sting with the short hair.
Like Surfer Sting?
Yeah, Surfer Sting. And so that was one of my first WCW figures. Never seen him, never heard about it. And then I think shortly after that, I discovered WCW, but it was still not what Nitro was and all that stuff.
Oh, of course not. Yeah, because that was probably TBS at that time.
Yeah, and it was weird because when you're a kid, there's just one promotion. It's WWE. But then when you find out, there's other wrestling on other different places and channels, and everybody's got it easy today. You could look on YouTube and see that, but there was no YouTube. We couldn't find there was tape trading or finding it in a Video Treats or Movie Stars or whatever.
Video Treats, dude. The inside baseball here is hilarious today. Video Treats.
So we had to go rent it. We had to NASA was the Coliseum home video
for the WWF pay-per-views. Yeah.
No, yeah. So I mean, I didn't really. I don't know. I was introduced to WCW like that, so I'm intrigued to see if there's other stories going on with this. I mean, like I said, it reminded me of a little bit of the Monday Night War show. Yeah.
Let's break down that first episode.
Yeah,
so the first episode basically talked about their rise and how Bischoff got there, him signing Hogan. That was interesting, and they talked about the heel turn, the building of the NWO. They're killing it all the way up to how they built that Starrcade match between him and Sting.
Yeah.
And that is supposedly supposed to be the first nail in the coffin. What did you think of that first episode and how they brought that together?
So a lot of people, I feel like I'm the nostalgic one here, to where kids watching today, if they watch that when Hogan turned on WCW and when he joined the NWO, just being that third man, like, I don't think people understand how big of a deal it was back then compared to like things today.
Yeah.
Like it was like the biggest thing going, and watching it today and never living and through it and watching it live at that time, like you had no idea, because this is right. It was like
All
there
right.
was
for you
put yourself in that
millennials.
time.
Here's how I can describe this. Think LeBron James leaving Cleveland to go to Miami, and all those videos of people burning his jersey when he left to go to Miami. Like, it was that big of a deal. It would be like Babe Ruth stepping up to the plate, looking at all the fans at Yankee Stadium, and then basically saying, yeah, screw you people, I'm out of here. And then just drops the bat and leaves. Like, it was that big of a deal.
No, I know. And like, so like, that's like what WCW had to do from the first episode to like get up this other talent. They had to change what was going on, what they were doing. And then by him gaining like a Hogan or whatnot, you know, like that was a big deal. Like that was like your figurehead to go over. And like, there's really no comparison, because like just watching that on YouTube is not the same as when it was going on, how like crazy that was, because you got to go to school knowing that like something happened last night on the pay-per-view, and like you're trying to do a test on Monday and just to get home to see what the hell's going to happen on tonight. Like it was a lot bigger deal than what it was is today. So I mean, just going into that part of it, to where I feel like we as a generation that grew up watching it have more of a connection to this show as opposed to someone just watching the end of it. So like we lived through it, right?
Well, that's the thing. The availability for television back then was different. I mean, we literally had to wait. I mean, there was no, oh man, what happened? And going and just grabbing your smartphone and looking at like spoilers or results from the night before. If you didn't get the pay-per-view, you literally had to wait 24 hours for Nitro to start out, unless you had some friend in school who was as big as a mark as you were, who ordered it, who could spoil everything for you. It was like, oh, dude, did you order it? Like, there were times where I remember you would come up to me like senior year and be like, dude, did you watch this? Nah, man,
I needed to talk to somebody.
Oh God, because I was the only one. You're like, dude, we're like those two like the closeted wrestling fans. They're like, we didn't want people to know that we were big losers.
So Cooter, so I used to throw up flags about that. So on my bag, the thing to do is take white out and like draw things on your bag, and now you have like symbols on your bag.
Sport bag? Yeah.
So I put like NWO on there, DX. I don't know. This is like 9th grade maybe. But, you know, it was cool. Everybody writing on the book bag. So like I had to throw out some wrestling signals to be like, oh, he's watching it too. Without saying, hey, everybody, I watch wrestling. Be friends with me. Come hang out.
Hey, Credo, did you watch SummerSlam last night?
We can't talk about those things. We had to like write codes to people and pass them in class. Anyway, it's starting to feel like Get Off My Lawn podcast, not another back in our day. You kids today don't.
Yeah. When you talk about the end of that first episode where they were bringing up the Sting match, they touched on it a little bit, and Bischoff tells one story on this particular program, and he tells a completely different version.
Really?
When they edit. Not that it's different, it's similar, but it's a little more in detail on his podcast when they actually reviewed the Starrcade pay-per-view itself with him and Conrad. And it's one of the greatest things you will ever see, because he basically talks about how it's kind of like what he said. Sting wasn't motivated. He had a lot going on in his personal life, which were things that they left out on that show. They said he looked like he hadn't been working out. You saw the match. He was wearing a T-shirt. You know what I mean? And one of the things was he didn't have a tan, right? And Conrad's like, so wait a minute. What you're trying to say is all you had to do was Stinger Splash, Scorpion Death Drop, right?
Yeah.
Scorpion Death Lock, tap out. Everybody's happy. And you screwed the finish on your biggest pay-per-view ever for a show you've been building for a year and a half because the fucking guy wasn't tanned? Is this real? And I'm just like, oh my God, they're screaming at each other for like the next 10 minutes. Yeah. And he's just trying to talk about it. But I see what Eric was saying. If if it looks like it's not going to work and the guy's not motivated, maybe there needs to be some type of shenanigans. Do you feel like it should have been a clean victory?
Yeah, and like the biggest thing we hear from this, and we've heard many times, was Hogan. And I was thinking about it last night. Honestly, I'm like, okay, listen, you don't understand how big of a celebrity Hogan was back then, to where it was like Michael Jackson, like any president of the United States, Hulk Hogan, like everybody in the world knew who Hulk Hogan was. You know what I mean? So going to WCW, he could. I feel like I think he should deserve the right to, kind of give a yay or nay about his character. But to a certain extent, to where he was a little bit greedy, like of not doing the right thing and just trying to stay on top as long as he could of being, the number one guy. But
do you think it was that, or?
Listen, I understood, I understand where he was coming from, because like he was like at the height of that like celeb, like you couldn't be any more famous than who Hulk Hogan is, and to like,
but not only
come with that power now he has,
And that's true, but at the same time, as much as he's protecting himself, I feel like you also have to protect the business and company that you work for. So if the guy that you're working with might screw this up, hey, if he screws this up and this shits the bed, I don't have somewhere to work tomorrow. Mm-hmm. Not that they were going to go out of business or anything like that, but that downswing could have happened a hell of a lot faster if they screwed it up worse than what they did. No. And that's how I feel. And I'm like, hey, listen, yeah, am I protecting myself? But at the same time, he was probably protecting everybody, and that's something that I think gets overlooked.
No, and that's the thing is like I feel we're getting some. It's like stuff that we knew, but a little bit more like just like explaining the story, I guess, a little bit more with it. So I don't know. I'm intrigued. It's one of those. It's a Dwayne Johnson, The Rock production, or like his a production company underneath it. So I know he's talked a little bit about it. But I wrote notes for the second one. If I could bring up, is there anything else in the first one you want to say?
Well, I just want to say this. I don't remember seeing much of The Rock in the second one. Maybe a little bit when they were like contrasting what was going on in Raw. But that first episode, it seemed like he was popping up on that episode a lot. And I'm like, this is so weird. Like he looks so out of place on that panel, because you got Hart, you got Bischoff, you got Nash, all these guys with like podcasts and stuff like that. It's like I felt like the people who were missing, like, okay, I think Conan was on there, right?
Yep.
I'm like, where's Tony Schiavone? And then I read he didn't want to do it. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense.
Oh, I believe Nash said that he was like, he didn't get paid enough, so I think he said it was pretty much high the whole episode that he was asking questions. It's in the news. You can Google it.
I think he said that on his podcast.
Yeah, he said on his podcast too, because he was like, he wasn't getting paid enough, and he didn't want to go into too much, I guess, what was going on. But it's one of those things, though. It's like, are they beating a dead horse, though, or no? I mean, like, we know the Monday Night Wars. We know they failed. Do you think we heard the story too many times? But it's still interesting to see.
I think we're also getting other stories, because the thing that I liked about the second episode, we can get into that. When you start talking about who killed WCW, I think what we're seeing overall is that it's just not one thing.
Yeah.
It was like the perfect storm. And they talk about the problems between the boys, people like the Goldberg thing. I think the stuff they were talking about that was happening as a company, being under a larger umbrella, like some of those things, I was like, dude, how did they like not get investigated? Like, how can you take the money, make WCW pay for all that production, right? For videotapes and all that stuff, but the proceeds for that doesn't go to WCW. It goes to a different section under Time Warner. And then they were taking losses from other parts of like Turner and putting it on WCW. It was just screwing with the books. And I find that as interesting as I do just the backstage stuff, because again, it's just not one thing. It's just like 10 different things happening all at once, and just, man, it's like an avalanche. It starts with that tiny little snowball.
Yep. I know, and there's some similarities happening with somebody else we could talk about later. But here's some of my notes I took about. Okay. I wrote down, and I want to talk to you about them. So Nash, for example, I think towards the beginning he said, they were booking Nitro, and then they were doing Thunder on Thursdays or whatever. Right. So like they're doing two for the longest time, and then I forget when the other one quit. But he was saying, they were doing 10 hours of content booking each week, and how hard that is.
Well, you figure what? There was 3 hours on Nitro. They said house shows on Tuesdays and Wednesdays.
Yeah.
and then a 2 hour. Yeah, so that's a lot.
And so, but look at today too, because like I always heard, I think Triple H and other people say that like the 3 hours for just Raw, that's a lot of content to write every week, a live show to progress your story. You know, like there's so much, there's a lot of time, but then it's like, it's a lot of writing to get it all down. And it almost goes back because like Vince liked a lot of writing scripts that had to be by the script. Can't they go back a little bit more to where if they trust you, it could be a little bit more ad lib and like improv, you know, like just to, because I like when some things are authentic, but you need to have the beginning and end for them to know where we're going and to remember. I don't know.
I think what Bischoff
it's a lot of content.
I think what Bischoff was trying to do, and they brought this up, like part of the reason they got Bret Hart was to make him the cornerstone of Thunder.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you look at the product today, we have two separate brands. So, yeah, is it a lot of writing? But you have all these people to work with. Whereas back in those days, it was one roster for all those shows. I mean, it was a huge roster.
Yeah.
Which I think if you had split it in two and done it that way, it might have been easier to book because you could have one team working on who's just on Thunder and who's just on Nitro. Excuse me. And they didn't have the benefit of that. You're literally trying to book two shows with the same cast, and that's a little more difficult.
No,
You're trying to make what happened Thursday relevant on Monday and likewise, and it just wasn't working.
No, yeah. You mentioned Goldberg. He remained undefeated, and it got to the point where it was too much. Sound familiar? Maybe like, oh, what's going on now with undefeated streaks, but those for championships. And just as an undefeated guy coming in, did they paint themselves into a corner like, shit, maybe he should have lost one match? Or did it get too... I mean, the streak is different. That's a whole different thing. But like this guy just was like just an undefeated wrestler, right? Coming in, beating everybody. Went to a certain point, and they just had to end it. But how they ended it, it was...
They were basically saying I'm busted open. And I thought it was a great... when they say he was great for 3-minute matches.
Yeah.
And then, okay, now we got to do 5-minute matches.
Yeah.
And then it was like, okay... Once you start getting to the 7 to 9 minute range, he starts to get exposed. I still remember, and I was watching this match live. I remember the Goldberg. I think it was Lord Steven Regal at that time.
Yes, Regal.
And
That's,
that
you
was
can Google
one
that
of
one.
like, oh my goodness. And I mean, I've heard so many different versions and so many different scenarios of how that happened. Most recently, it was Bischoff basically saying, "Yeah, like." Regal's are right. You know, like, well, in hindsight, he was right. But at the time, it was, this is our guy, and you're making him look bad, and this and that.
But Regal's like, you know, you said you wanted an 11-minute match. I'm going to give you an 11-minute match. I think it was 11 minutes, but you know what I mean? Like, he said it like that, and he's like, that's how much time he's going to give him. And he straight up knows what to do for wrestling, how to get to that time. And you put him up against a guy like Goldberg that they weren't even, like, training in the background to, like...
That's the problem. And that's the thing that we were saying today. The guy didn't know what he was doing, and he actually admitted it. And good for him for saying it, because that takes some guts to say.
Yeah.
You have to give him his props for that. Listen, if someone's going to sit there and offer you all this money, give you this huge undefeated streak, put you on TV every week, who the fuck would say no to that?
I know, man.
At the same time, they're just as guilty for the fact he's just as guilty because. I remember when his contract went up, and we've heard these stories about Hogan getting him an agent and this and that and the lawyer bullshit. And it's like, you're negotiating this huge money deal, but how many years later, 20 years later, you're admitting you didn't know what the fuck you were doing? Like, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't really invest in their investment, you know, like to where... Hey, maybe we should start teaching him about, like, after every show of, like, some things, basic stuff, to where he came in as a football player. He came in as a, you know.
Dude, what, did he train in a power plant for, what, 2 fucking weeks?
I know, yeah. So I'm like.
Holy God.
So I don't know. It was good hearing both of the stories. I like seeing them bicker back and forth. I hated, Bret Hart fan, man. Like, I hated that he was even in WCW, let alone now he gets his career ended there after, like, 30 seconds with them. And that just pissed me off as a Bret Hart fan. Because
kick.
It was like. You know
it's funny, and I'm going to say something very, very cool, because Nash said, just like I said last week about Cody, he said there's more money in the babyface chasing the title. Oh, shit. I believe I heard that somewhere. I believe that was me, right?
Predicting the future.
Yeah, of course. I guess the point I want to make is he's also said that he wanted to go over clean. They decided to do shenanigans. But he also said that, and this wasn't on the show, but I remember him saying the idea behind the finger poke of doom was to set up the pay-per-view match between Hogan and Goldberg.
Yeah.
Right? Well, Goldberg for years kept saying how Kevin Nash screwed him and he just wanted to beat him. Like, yeah, because that made all the sense for me to give the fucking belt to Hogan like the next night or whatever it was, right? The whole idea was to set up for you and Hogan. And then what happened? Goldberg got hurt. I think that was when he punched the fucking window. Remember that? Like,
I remember.
so not only can you not wrestle, you're trying to stick your fist through a window and you fuck up your arm like an idiot.
I mean, a former guest, we actually spoke to him a few years ago. It was the Rhode Island Comic-Con or something. Goldberg. He's one of the highest videos on our YouTube page. I don't want to shamelessly self-promote.
I don't care.
YouTube.com/Another Wrestling Podcast.
No, I mean about Goldberg. I care about our YouTube. Yeah, go look at it, but leave a comment about how much Bill Goldberg sucks.
He was a nice guy. He was a nice guy. I'll give him that, though. He was nice
Shout
in
out to
person.
Bill. There you go.
But he did throw some shade at Roman Reigns at the time on this episode, and that's why I think it has the most hits because people saw it, and he was making fun of Roman about something. You have to go watch it. I have to watch it again. It's happened many years ago.
What did he say?
He mentioned something really quick about Roman, and it was because at that time I think there was like a Twitter feud or somebody was saying stuff about each other, and Roman said something about Goldberg, and then Goldberg said something in one of our videos about it's on the page. You'll see it. Just anyway, because I'm just saying he was on the show once, and we had him on the YouTube page.
Who knew? I didn't.
No, a lot of interesting things that they're showing for people that didn't grow up with it. But like Goldberg versus Hogan was just on a Nitro, and that crowd was crazy. Just for like he finally got to go against Hogan to win the WCW championship. And people are like, well, why are you putting this on Nitro, like Raw or whatever? Like, why wasn't it on pay-per-view to draw that money? Because all the people were behind it. You think it was like a missed chance for that part? Because, I mean...
Again, here's what I think. Well, how long after did Nash beat him for that? Because I'm trying to sit here and think the money is in the rematch.
Yeah.
To me. And they made mention on the episode that they felt like Bill had held the belt for too long.
Yeah.
And that was around the time where, Bischoff was all tired and Kevin took the book. And I don't know. I feel like it would have been better if they would have set up the rematch sooner. But I felt like he held on to that thing for... I don't remember how long he was champ for.
I know, and we don't have to get into those details, but I do remember the stun gun.
The point. Oh my God!
At that time, you're like, how do you beat him? How do you stop him? And then I don't think I saw that live. I heard it from somebody in school the next day because you couldn't know about it.
You heard it from it was me because I've ordered 3 WCW pay-per-views in my life, and that was one of them, and I couldn't believe that Scott Hall is sitting there with the Mounties fucking cattle prod.
Oh yeah, it's like, I just call it a stun gun, but yeah, I'm like, yeah, and that's funny because like I didn't know that till like the next morning, I think, after that happened. But I'm like, how do you beat the undefeated guy? You had to use that kind of a gimmick. I get it, the heels win, but whatever. Anyway, it was just funny some of the reminiscing that happened in the episode. But one thing I want to bring up is the similarities between WCW and AEW. And I love all the companies. I don't want to crap on anybody, but there's a lot of things I feel like...
That's my job.
that's Angry Cooter, because they'll have all the hate mail drawn to...
What's that email for sending hate mail to me?
Right now, just another wrestling podcast at Gmail, but we're going to have to get an Angry Cooter one. I got to maybe fake at whatever. And
no, there is an actual Gmail.
Oh, maybe.
angrycooter@gmail.com. Send all your hate mail there, because, I'll find that shit funny.
We'll have to read it on the show one day. That'll be great. But no, I mean, so the similarities, WCW, there's a lot of things like Tony Khan, Eric Bischoff, like the Bucks and the NWO and like the Elite and the NWO. I feel like it's a lot of similar stuff happening. And a lot of people are complaining about like just the stories on there or what's making them watch. A lot of fans are talking about it. It's not just like, I want to be positive for everybody. I want everybody to do good.
Okay.
but like you got to get our money, right? You got to entice us to watch it. We're paying the money to go see your event or watch it on TV.
Right.
So from what I understand, like the stories aren't really clicking with a lot of people. There's stuff that I'm just too old. I don't have enough time to watch it, but sometimes I'll like listen to like Cornette's podcast, shows like that's where they give the play-by-plays of what happened each week. And just hearing it, I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like, but just watching the whole WCW show, it reminds me of like, I feel like what's going on with AEW right now. I'm like, they just don't know
So
it
what do you
yet.
think are some of the similarities between AEW and WCW? Because I got a few.
I mean, just some of that's where, like, I feel like the Elite and then the NWO, where, like, they're focusing too much on the Elite, where when you go by the ratings on, I think, WrestleNomics that Cornette show always uses, they're showing, like, how there's, like, dips in, like, certain, like, who's actually watching it or, not watching it, right? So...
What you mean segment by segment?
Yeah, so they're really analyzing it really hardcore to where I don't want to get into that, but, I mean, just, I don't know, like, the whole thing about it, it feels like they look like WCW.
Here's the similarities that I see.
Yeah, tell me, please.
All right. WCW had great storylines. You had the NWO. They did a great job of having storylines for the Cruiserweight division, and they had stuff like Raven's Flock. They had storylines. I feel like the one difference between WCW and AEW, I think AEW relies more on the power of names against each other without the storylines.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's you can take two bums, and if you give them a great story, I would rather watch that than, oh my God, you're putting Bryan Danielson versus Okada with no story on television. And like that's what it seems like.
Build
Not
it
that
up,
that happened,
sell
but,
it. I know.
but you get what I'm saying?
No,
Like,
yeah, no,
there's
build it
no
up.
reason for me to watch it. I'm not invested in it. But I've been watching these two jackoffs who nobody knows, but they're telling a great story, so I kind of want to watch that. The thing where they're similar, you see a lot of that older WWE talent over there, just like you did in WCW, and you have what seems to be underutilized, disgruntled, younger talent that's probably eventually going to make their way to WWE.
Yep. My
question is going to be some of those people who are in that middle range, guys like maybe Adam Cole, maybe Mox, somebody like that. They're kind of in that middle range. What happens when their contracts go up? Do they maybe want to go back and leave this shit show? Are they welcome back?
No, yeah. No,
Are they going to get like the Jeff Jarrett treatment from Vince McMahon?
No, I know. It's you have like the power of the purse, right? So like you can buy whatever toy you want to play in your toy, land of land of misfit toys almost, right? So he's buying his own characters, right? Like Monet, Sasha Banks, like hasn't really done much for the rate. Like there's a lot of names, Edge, or people that are going over thinking that it was like a lot different with like I don't know viewership and stuff now, and it's like dying off in a way. Like the first impression's almost like worn off, right? Or it's just I don't know. They're not keeping people's attention. Is what you're saying with the story, but like I feel like he's just buying the names and not like you're saying going for the story. So
the one thing that they're doing right so far.
Yeah,
I saw I think the last 2 weeks I've seen the segments with MJF and Roosh. And I have no idea who Roosh is, but boy, are they telling a great story. And it makes me want to, check out Forbidden Door. I know how you feel about Forbidden Door because of, all the Japanese talent that's going to be on there.
I don't know them. I can't get, I just don't know them.
I don't know them and I can't pronounce their names. Is that what you, but it almost makes me want to check that out because I feel like it's drawing me in. That's what they need more of. They need better storylines. I need a reason to watch your show. If I'm watching your show and I grab my phone within the first 5 minutes, you have fucking failed. I'm sorry. If I have my phone in my hand, there's no reason for me to watch your show.
Yep. That's it. You lost the attention span. And that's I mean, going with WCW to this, like WCW at its height when it came out, going against Raw, beating him in the ratings for 83 weeks, like that was like, it's the alternative, and WWE needs to catch up now. And it was like that, I think, when they first came out, like AEW had that momentum of like, wow, there's a good alternative. They're going to do what, us fans want from, whatever. And then like it kind of lost that momentum, and now WWE's picking up speed because now they don't have half the guys in creative who are over there, and you actually have like a Triple H involved more, doing more of what's going on. So you're seeing them trying to take over the race of like productive, just making the place better, right? The camera angles we talked about. So
Yeah.
it's
The production value.
Yeah. So I mean, that's the biggest thing to me. To me, is AEW's with WCW. It's. I feel like it's in that same realm. Not as crazy as what WCW was at the time, but getting all those big names and just collecting all those names and then not knowing what to do with them.
The one benefit they do have is they're not owned by Turner.
Yeah.
So they don't have to deal with the backstage politics from that bigger umbrella over them. So, I mean, they're what? They're like a leased program.
Yeah.
They're not a program that's owned by the network, and that it benefits them, and it's also a disadvantage at the same time. Obviously production value or production costs and all that kind of stuff. But at the end of the day, when it comes to AEW, you're not going to have to worry about a bigger company sabotaging them, and that's the one thing that is going to be good for them.
No, and we're only 2 episodes in. There's a lot of this show. I think we're gonna have to talk. It's gonna be a segment till the end of the episode because I'm really digging this one.
There's supposed to be 2 more. I believe there's 4 episodes, but I mean, I think next week they're talking about Russo and all that stuff.
Yeah.
So that should be interesting. But there's going to be a 4th one. Like after Russo, what the hell else is there? Are they going to talk about how Shane and Vince? Oh God.
Yeah, like there could be a story. But so wait a minute. Who do you think killed WCW? In your opinion of just growing up with it, seeing it, what you saw, not even knowing all the backstage politics, but like your point of view. Who did you think really killed him?
Then or now?
Then
I would have said Hogan.
Yeah.
Because the way they portrayed him, especially at that Bash at the Beach incident where it was like he was the person who was the selfish bastard, he wants the belt, and you saw what Vince Russo did, even though they claimed that it was a work.
Yeah.
Whatever. I would have said then it was Hogan, that he's just a selfish old prick who wanted to stay on top. It doesn't work for me, brother. We've all heard that before.
Yep.
Now, being older, a little more informed, again, it's not just one person. I think at the tail end, by episode 4, they're just going to say it was a perfect storm of multiple things all happening at once that killed that company.
No, yeah.
I think if there's one person to blame, it's business. Because when you have mergers, you have the Time Warner, and I think at the tail end you had AOL.
Yeah.
God, we're really dating ourselves. AOL.
America
right?
Online.
But when that happened, things just seemed to go that much faster and that much faster downhill, I should say.
No, yeah. And, just growing up, I think my first point of view as a kid watching it, I was like, I don't know if I was leaning toward like Eric Bischoff, like to where he just didn't know what to do with like the whole NWO thing, and everything just started falling apart from there. I think I was like an outsider looking in. I was kind of like Eric Bischoff and whatever. Then, because like I didn't really know all the other players in the game. So I think just like then I thought it was like an Eric Bischoff. Now, it's the same thing. It's just like you kind of like see what's going on to where, you're spending big money on contracts, TVs, whatever, getting ratings, who's being who, are they going to give you that primetime spot? And just kind of like what they did with him, they kind of pulled the plug on him and said,
Yeah.
you know what, there's no more night or there's no whatever, and that's it. Before WWE, I think, and I don't even want to get into that story or how they came in and bought them and whatever,
Right.
but, and that's another thing going back to AEW to like, could they say nothing can happen? They're okay where they are. But I mean, if there's no ratings on this, nobody's watching it. Why am I spending X amount of money for this? We can move them down to the whatever Tubi channel or whatever. I don't know.
Watch Dynamite on
Tubi.
Fubo. Who do you think gets a bad rap that really doesn't deserve it when it comes to the
WCW?
alleged? Yes.
Probably Kevin Nash. I mean, they say he had he was at the top at the time. He's been through it all. He was world champions, whatever. Out of anybody in the locker room, why not? I would ask Kevin Nash for advice to how to book it. And then your problem is you're not just booking a 2-hour episode. Now you're booking 10 hours, and you gotta sometimes on paper it doesn't look as bad as what happens when it looks like on TV. You could say he does X, Y, and Z, but when you look at it on TV, it's maybe he shouldn't have did the Y part and just went from X to Z, and I don't know. You're thinking about like 10 hours of content and like think of what you're going to have to do. And, you know,
Here's a hot
Kevin
take
Nash.
for you. Here's a hot take for you. And this is going to piss all you people off. You know who I think it's a bad rap that really doesn't deserve it?
Don't say it.
What?
You're going to say it.
Say it.
You're going to say Goldberg, aren't
No,
you?
no, I'm going to say Vince Russo.
Oh, okay. No, yeah.
Vince Russo?
I thought you were going to rub me with the Bret Hart thing.
Listen, Goldberg's a hero. He kicked that jabroni right in the fucking head, and that made me so happy. All right. No, I'm going to say Vince Russo for the simple fact that you blame him for all that crash TV and all that. That was the death of WCW. And that was already in the fucking toilet. Once the shit hits the water, it's already there.
Yep.
At that point, you either got to piss on it or flush it.
Yep.
And it was already there. He just flushed it.
Another past guest we had was Vince Russo, talking a lot about different stuff like that. To where, he's a TV writer. They come into this looking at names on a board, and granted he did more wrestling, but there's other people that are just writing stories or writing TV content that don't know the wrestlers and they're just seeing the names and seeing how they can piece it together to write these shows. So at least the man had some good stuff. The man, maybe some things didn't work, but like I said, not every episode like this one's going to be a golden one.
A lot of bad stuff.
Sometimes
but at that point, it doesn't matter. It was already done.
I know.
Bro.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
No, but okay, we kind of gave our take on it, right? So, but here's what other people are saying. Ric Flair says, in quotes, "I've tried to lay low on this, but let's face it, who killed WCW? It's a three-headed monster. Jim Herd, Eric Bischoff, and Vince Russo."
How the fuck does Jim Herd even factor into this?
He said there's no individual wrestler or faction that caused anything to kill WCW. It was the people in charge that created dysfunction, animosity, and tried to divide and conquer by lying to everyone and involving themselves in the promotion, which was the ultimate failure. God, I could give you 1,000 more examples. I am one to live through all three nightmares and to be saved by the WWE! ! Thank you to the WWE for bringing someone who was dead in the water as a result of these three people back to life. So,
no, by my wings.
So Ric Flair had a little bit on that. Conan straight up said Scott Hall and Kevin Nash killed WCW.
He would.
I will have to talk to him. I've been trying to get him. I've been reaching out to Conan, trying to get him on. Maybe in a few weeks, a few months, we'll see what happens. But it'd be interesting to talk to him about it. But no, he just straight up said Kevin Hall.
He said Nash. Nash.
Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. So I mean, looking at it from our point of view, they saved. I think they made wrestling interesting again. To seeing them on Nitro that night, and once again, you can watch a YouTube clip, but to live it at home when there's no dirt sheets online and this is happening live on TV, it was a different moment seeing them at that time. So
I could put it to you this way. There was a button back in the day on our remote controls that was just labeled last.
Yep.
Right? During the Monday Night Wars, when they were finally over and the smoke cleared, you couldn't see the word last on that button anymore because we were just going back and forth, and it was the greatest time to watch wrestling on television. Back and forth. And I miss it, and I wish that it could be duplicated, but I don't feel like it ever will.
I know, man. Times are changing, bro. Man, we're going to have to rename this podcast.
Now let's get out of here and watch some Matlock and Murder, She Wrote, because we're old as dirt and we've aged ourselves.
Too sweet. But more on WCW, man. Well, there's hopefully the rest of the episodes are good, and maybe bring up some other topics about what we got to talk about it. I want to say one last thing, though, because Kevin Nash did say something, too. He was featured in the docuseries, too, and someone who has been accused of helping kill WCW by a former coworker and stablemate Conan, like we just mentioned.
Okay.
So during the latest episode of his Click This, Nash offered an alternative take on what helped contribute to WCW's demise, making mention of the fact that he believes won't ultimately make any of Who Killed WCW episodes. He says, I know a lot of people don't know this, and I know probably won't be brought up and I know it won't be brought up in this documentary, but if you ever watch the WCW pay-per-view, at the end of it, the last thing was produced by Turner Home Entertainment. Nash said, so that's who was getting paid. Our biggest revenue that we had was the pay-per-views, and Turner Home Entertainment got that in their books. We didn't. As
that's what they were saying in the second episode. They actually did bring that up. It's the mismanagement of money from one part of the company to the other. That has nothing to do with one It's crazy.
Yeah, and he said that, they're building up a premium cable channel, and they had to throw this on top of us, so the creative accounting was as much of a problem as anything else was. So, I mean, another little insider take of why, WCW died or whatever. But no, it's been cool to see some of these inside stories. I love talking about it. A lot of WCW memories. I don't know, 2 episodes in, would we rate it? Good to watch. Everybody's.
I think it's definitely worth the watch. I mean, if you follow the people who are on the documentary on social media, a lot of them have podcasts and they are talking about it right now, and it really it's a lot more informative to hear them long version on their podcast as opposed to just like in segments on the show. So this has been fun for me because, again, this is something we're talking about. Great storytelling, old storytelling works too. But if you do it right, even though we've seen this story 3 or 4 times, if you do it right, you're going to bring the people with you, and that's really cool.
No, yeah. So we were talking the other day. So go back like 12 years or so on Facebook, I made a group. It was called like the Marks for Life group, right?
That's correct.
Wrestling fans. And the thing about it was I didn't want to like post wrestling stories on my feed because like that was a big thing. Like, oh, look, I'm following the news, or I like this team.
You loser, why are you posting up a picture of Lex Luger? Oh.
So I was like, all right, let me do it in secret now on this Facebook group. So
Nobody knows that I'm a loser.
So we decided to utilize this because we have about like over 3,000 marks in there from around the tri-state area, overseas, throughout the country, and beyond. So it's kind of grown a little bit. Not as big as some of these other mark groups, but it's something I built, Tony. So
we've got the best of the best. We get a lot of good discussions in there. Hop in the group. What's the name of the group, Credo? Come on now.
So I actually changed the name because
I know. That's what I'm telling you. What's the
under
name
our
of the
banner.
group?
So if you go to facebook.com/groups/another wrestling group, you can join, and we'll let you into the group, and you can talk with us or things that have happened on the show. We'll ask different questions like I did this week. Basically, we were asking. We knew we were watching this. Who killed WCW? Asked the group, on Vice, whatever. Who do you think killed WCW? So put the message out there, letting people know what we're going to talk about. You did mention really quick, though, I don't know if you could see this, but this is, he said, episode 2 is really well done. It seemed like they broke down the politics between the wrestlers from 97 to 99.
Yes.
In a way more informative way. You said you're interested to see how they better explain parent company issues more. They touched on the changes during the Time Warner merger and the story you never heard from Eric about the corporate investigation on him.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that was crazy.
So you said you're curious to see how they approach the merger with AOL. Is Guy Evans involved in the documentary?
Yeah, he is. No, but I found out afterwards. But you know what's great about that? Man, that's great writing. Man, I do good when I'm sober, huh?
Well, the only way to see it is facebook.com/group/another wrestling group. No, but we have another a mark from the group, James Jr. Richter. He says, I like from the sound of it, Brett wasn't the only one that couldn't stand Goldberg's skills.
I think he meant lack of skills.
So, so James, man, thanks for posting. No, interesting for James, he seems to be a Bret Hart fan like myself. So maybe, our group I understand we're going to become best friends now, James, because we're both Bret Hart.
Sorry, dude. I've drank enough. I can't do this no more. No.
All right, but no, that's cool. Check it out. I think that'll be cool. We can utilize some of that, what's going on. But at the end of the day, man, I think, we'll have to figure out what else we're going to talk about next time. Do you know what we're talking about next week?
Credo, can you drive me home? I've had way too much tequila.
I'll call you an Uber.
Cheap bastard.
Call it Uber. And, maybe like a double, like you have to ride with somebody else too, so you can, not too cheap. But
oh my God, you would get me a share ride?
A shared ride.
Cheap fuck.
Things cost money today, Cooter. There's it's a wave of the future happening.
Listen, yeah, I know. You got kids to feed. You know who you sound like right now?
Get off my lawn, Cooter.
No, you're Heath Slater. I got kids.
I got kids. Oh, man. I like it. I think we have something going with an older generation watching what's happening now. And, we're telling everybody.
And in 20 years, when we're doing this show with our walkers,
another geriatric wrestling program brought to you by
Sal, is this studio wheelchair accessible?
Yes, it is, Tony. Yes, it is.